So today we've been relying on a couple of social media feeds, primarily through the Periscope app that has been provided by a couple of members participating in the sit-in, Beto O'Rourke of Texas and Scott Peters of California. I believe we have one of those feeds back up and running now, so we'll take you back live to the House.
I can tell you that only a month ago, right in my neighborhood in North Minneapolis, a woman who's 59 years old, grandmother of many, was driving in a car, and on Plymouth Avenue, some guys were shooting, and she got shot and killed. Her name was Burdell Beeks. When she was killed, she was the only one killed at that moment. But Burdell Beeks is alive in my heart right now, even though I never met her. To think that her grandchildren, they're not gonna have grandma at the birthday party. They're not gonna have her at the graduation. They're not gonna have her at the important moments in their life when you would expect grandma, that loving presence, to be right there with you. I also have a friend whose name is Reuben Rahamim. Reuben immigrated from Israel many years ago. He was a sign maker. He made signs. And he came up with some innovative things to help people who couldn't see know where they were with the signage. And Reuben was so good at making signs when he started his business grew. And he was so awesome at his business that when the Undersecretary of Commerce came to Minneapolis and said, show me a rockin' business, a small business that's getting it done out here, hiring people, I took him to Reuben's business because Reuben, his business was right there in the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. He hired people of all colors. He was open, he was friendly, he was an awesome guy. He had a wonderful family. And Reuben, one day, 2 weeks after the Undersecretary of Commerce was at his business, somebody who had purchased 6,000 rounds online brought a gun in and mowed down everybody in the business.
Oh, wow.
His son was 17 years old at the time.
Oh.
And his son, who's a dear friend of mine named Sammy Rahamim, was on a bus to go to University of Wisconsin just to see it. He just was going on a college visit. And he got a text that his father, that there was a shooting incident in the neighborhood. So he called his dad, and he was tight with his dad. And he texted his father, but that text never was answered. Sammy's father couldn't answer the text because he was dead. And so my heart's with everybody who suffered a loss in the tragedy and the massacre in Orlando, in Charleston, in Sandy Hook, in Aurora, the 62 people who were shot one weekend in Chicago, the one by one shootings that happen all the time in this country. We may be coming from different walks of life, suburb, city, country. Maybe we lost our loved one through suicide or through a mass killing or one at a time. But we are absolutely united in bringing a vote to end this gun violence. We are absolutely united in bringing this to a vote. If you do not like background checks, come and vote no and explain it to your constituents. If you do not like no fly, no buy, come down here and take your vote and you explain to your constituents why you think somebody who's suspected of terrorism ought to have a gun. Have the guts, have the courage of your convictions. Come on down here and let's do our job, everybody. I'm staying all night. I know you are too. Let's do it.
I was impressed when I heard Jim Clyburn say this was his proudest moment in 46 years. My proudest moment in 18 months. And I tell people how much I love to be part of this community. And tonight, I really, really know why. So thank you to John and to David and to Catherine for doing this. Bill Pasquale quoted Isaiah and he said, "Is it I, Lord?" Samuel's question. And it is us, it's you and I tonight, for the whole world. I want to talk about two different things. Stanley talked about 32,964 gun deaths last year. Our 11,000 of them were homicides. And most of the rest of the 20,000, 2/3 were suicides. Wow. 2/3 of what we're talking about is suicides. Not no fly, no buy, but gun violence in America. And every one of us knows someone who's killed himself with a gun.
Yeah.
As I sat here this afternoon and tonight, I just started making a partial list of my friends. There's a depressed friend working on my campaign 2 years ago who went out and bought a gun on a Thursday morning and shot himself that afternoon. A friend that many of us knew last year who lost his job. The next morning he went and bought a gun at a gun store and shot himself. A good friend of mine 4 weeks ago, retired last year, 59, depressed, shot himself. High school classmate, Father Conroy in mine, 25 years old, came back to Vietnam, shot himself. The big brother of my longtime CFO at the dealership put a gun in his mouth, shot himself. The clerk of the Virginia House I served with for years, gun, shot himself, and on and on and on. I figure I must be close to 100 people that I know that have done that. And we all know that suicide is incredibly impulsive. You know, people that they interview who try to commit suicide and it doesn't work, almost always say, "What was I thinking?" They had interviews with people who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. Every one of them said on the way down, they were like, "God, what was I thinking?" But with a gun, there's no second chance. Very close to home, too close to home. Someone in my family jumped off the bridge, Route 15 up in Leesburg, 1996, just before the Democratic Convention. And by the grace of God, he didn't kill himself when he hit the water. And by the grace of God, there was a couple fishing who picked him up out of the water. And he's now 41 years old. But if he'd had a gun, he'd be dead today.
Yeah.
You know, the cynics would say, well, these are people who are killing themselves. I mean, what can you do? But even if you leave the victims aside, you think of the families. Every one of these families I know, the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the sisters, the kids. I saw somebody at a wake last night. I remember clearly when her dad killed himself back in our neighborhood in 1962. The family still suffers all these years later. Well, it may be no fly, no buy, and no bill, no vote, but there's so much we can do just to help this 2/3 of all gun deaths. We can have cooling off periods as part of that. We can have train the people in the gun stores to ask the simple question, do you feel like you're a danger to yourself or to others? We can have the CDC actually study gun violence. And a wonderful bill that I think California and Texas both have, we can allow family members and law enforcement to petition judges to put people on the background check list because they know that they're a danger and take those people. Many of these people, their families knew they were in trouble, and we can do this and move ahead. But number two, let me talk a little bit about process. You know, Speaker Ryan, when he got elected speaker, he said he was all for regular order. Well, like many of you, I spent many years in the Virginia House, the California House, Texas House. And regular order for me was you introduce a bill, the clerk sends it to a committee, the committee has hearings and they have a vote. Often they die in committee, but there's a hearing, there's a vote. Here, they go to the Judiciary Committee and they just disappear forever.
Yeah.
The process is not respected. There is no regular order in this Paul Ryan's house. And why not? Because the overwhelming public support for universal background check lists and for no fly, no buy. The Republicans do not want to vote because they know once they go on the board, they have to justify a vote that they know is wrong.
Right.
That intellectually it's wrong, morally it's wrong, emotionally it's wrong. They don't want to deal with it. So they keep us all night long on the floor rather than let us have a vote. You know, I was president of the Senate of Virginia for 8 years. 300 sessions I presided over, and unlike here, I opened it at 12 o'clock and I was there at the end.
Open it up.
So 99%. And there was one big rule, which is that you always treated the minority, the opposition, with respect.
What?
Yeah,
That's right.
Always with respect. The idea that the minority had a chance to speak its piece and the majority to work its will. So I was so disappointed with the way they treated Jim Clyburn last week. I've never seen anything like that in presiding stuff. I was so disappointed when they turned off the cameras and they turned off the microphones. That's against all process of letting the minority speak its piece. You know, when we criticize repressive governments, Syria, Iraq, China, Russia, the first thing we say is that they need a free and open press, that they need to be able to understand what their people are doing. And here, they've turned off the cameras, they've turned off the microphone, they've moved us in the direction of repressive government. You know, Speaker Ryan hides behind the thinnest of excuses that people on the terrorist background check list need due process. When does it ever make sense that terrorists determined by the FBI and the Homeland Security have more due process than 300 million Americans?
Yep. That's right.
I'm a proud Virginian. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, in which he talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, the Second Amendment, which came later, talks about infringing the right to buy a weapon if you're serving in the militia. That is not a higher right. Seth Moulton talked wonderfully about the restrictions that are implicit all through the Constitution. Well, at the very top is we have to have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness above the right to buy a gun when we're on a background checklist. Thank you very much.
Luis Gutierrez.
No bill. No break. 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 No bill. No break.
Thank you.
Sorry, Jeff. All right.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say to John Lewis and to thousands of others like him. I want to say thank you to John Lewis and thousands of others like him, John, who risked their lives so that one day I could stand at this podium.
Yeah.
I was born in an America where separate but equal was the law, and where I never would have been able to obtain a seat in the U.S. Congress.
Yes. Yeah.
But there were some people that fought tenaciously and sacrificed greatly, life and limb.
Yes.
Like John Lewis, so that one day, and I think out of respect for their sacrifice and for their commitment to democracy, we have a responsibility today. At least I know I do. So I want to say that first and foremost. I know what I am a product of. I'm a product of a broader history of struggle and of fighting than what I have done. I grew up with a hero, Roberto Clemente, who when he used to go and be with the Pirates, he couldn't be with the white baseball players. I grew in a certain neighborhood. That's different today. So I want to say thank you to everybody that's made the America a much greater place and has given me, I know a lot of us think we're just here because we're the best looking and the smartest and the most articulate. But you want to know something?
You're smart.
We're here because a lot of people give a lot of sacrifice. So I want to say thank you to all of them, first and foremost. Secondly, I grew up in an era in which I had to deal with my own prejudice and my own bigotry that you grow up with. The person that says he doesn't have any is the person who should take a good look long in the mirror as he grows up. And so that brings me to why I wanted to say a few words here today, because I gotta tell you, what you guys have said today, what the members of the Democratic Caucus have said today, it's been like an education that I have received sitting there, and I want to say thank you to each and every. I know that you might not feel that your words are powerful. They've been powerful to me. I will take them with me moving forward. From today on, they've been very, very powerful. And I want to thank you all. And so that's how you grew up. And so I remember waking up Sunday morning. And it was Orlando.
Yeah.
And I started thinking of my nieces and my nephews and the nearly 1 million Puerto Ricans that live between Orlando and Tampa. And we started searching and making sure that all of our youngsters were safe. I had thought that somehow, I could read in the newspapers and that happened to someone else.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it really came so very, very close to me. Puerto Rico is a small island, We're not a large community. 23 of those that were murdered that day were Puerto Rican. And it's almost as though my life and their life are interwoven. When I got to the Chicago City Council, the first vote I had to take a month there was on the gay rights ordinance. And I said, wow, the Cardinal was against it. Everybody was against it. It was 1986. And I said, oh, I gotta vote for that. I just gotten there, Jan, right? All that fighting and struggle, winning by 21 votes, and now I gotta take this vote. Well, I just want to share with everybody, I voted for the gay rights ordinance in 1986. I wasn't part of a progressive caucus.
Did they change the vote?
I wasn't part of a progressive caucus. I was just, like I said, this is what I feel I have to do. Because I have family members and neighbors and classmates, and I love them, and if I love them, I gotta stand up and protect them, regardless of the political consequences. And then I got here, and I remember going back over there with, I can see Barney Frank there, and it's 1996, right? And there's DOMA. And 60 some of us voted against it. 350 voted for DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. I remember going up to Frank and saying, can I get a few minutes? And he looked at me saying, I only got time for people who are against it. Assuming that being Puerto Rican, Catholic, and from the city of Chicago, I wouldn't be with them. Well, we spoke that day. You probably ask yourself, why am I? Because those kids were Puerto Rican, and most of them were gay. And they were having a wonderful time.
Yeah.
And I worked so hard.
In America.
I believe I've worked and I've committed myself to dealing with my own demons, my own prejudices, things that were thrust upon me by those around me, right? And worked them out. And then I saw those kids die, murdered. And it was a hate crime, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
It was a hate crime that day. Do you know if he hated himself?
Yeah.
I don't know if he had his own internal demons of hatred, but there was hatred there. And he was showing that. And I fought so that the people could be loved, so that Puerto Ricans could be loved, so that black people could be loved. Because this is all about the same thing, isn't it? Because this is really today we're standing up for people and their right not to be murdered by guns in this country, but we're also setting the stage to make sure that we all understand that Black lives matter, that marriage equality matters, that the Mother Earth matters, that a woman's right to choose matters, and with the same commitment and the same dedication and the same tenacity that we fight today against gun violence, we're going to stand up for women and gay people and the environment and workers in this country. This is a new day. Allowing me to publicly tell you how much I love John Lewis and all of those that fought, and how extremely grateful I am, personally, and for the Latino community in general, how personally grateful we are that people gave up. So I have a responsibility to stand up to speak, because other people sacrificed so much to give me this right and this privilege. Thank you so much.
Long before there were HBO specials, there was a person on this floor who started to get up and start talking about the opiate crisis that we're facing. I'm proud to say that we're joined on the floor by Patrick Kennedy, our former colleague. Jim Hines of Connecticut.
Hate soup.
Thank you, John. Colleagues, last Sunday, I woke up like all of you to hear the terrible news of 49 of our fellow Americans dead at the end of a gun wielded by a madman. And coincidentally, that Sunday night, I went and I saw a movie called Newtown. Newtown traces the emotional roller coaster of a couple of the families that lost children at Sandy Hook Elementary School A place that resonates in the heart of the 7 members, 2 senators and 5 members from Connecticut. We all know the families. We know the teachers. Days don't go by when we don't bump into somebody who lost a child or knew a teacher at Sandy Hook. This documentary is torturous. It tells about the Hockleys who lost their son, Dylan. It tells about Mark Barden and his wife who lost their 7-year-old son, torn apart by a weapon of war.
Yes.
And I happened to bump into Mark Barden that night. And as he walked toward me, I knew I was going to have to answer that terrible question that each and every one of you has to answer practically weekly and that we in Connecticut answer every day. What are you going to do?
Yes.
Americans are dying. They're in pools of blood. What are you going to do? And my answer to Mark was going to be, we'll get to D.C. tomorrow. We'll be on the floor. We'll be naming some post offices. We'll be talking sports. We'll be talking about dinner. We'll be talking about Donald Trump. You know what we're going to do, Mark? Mark, who lost his 7-year-old at Sandy Hook, we're going to be quiet for 8 or 9 seconds. We're going to stand, so we're going to put on our serious face. These 435 people which govern the greatest country in the world, you know what we're going to do for you, Mark? We're going to shut up for 8 seconds. How do you feel about that?
Horrible.
I know how I felt about that. I felt I'm not doing that anymore. I am not doing that anymore. Silence as a way of honoring people is fine in a ballpark, it's fine in a house of worship, it's fine at your home, but in the chamber where with 2 hours of work we could save hundreds if not thousands of lives, silence is appalling.
Yes.
And I realized as I talked to Mark that this is a moment for moral clarity and moral language. And that's what's kept us going today. Moral clarity and moral language. I'll be honest with you, like all of you, I'm here to get something done. And so I tend to shy away from moral language, because if I set myself up as being the good and right, the people I need to negotiate are by implication not good and right. So I shy away from that language. But there are moments, and I think we're in a political moment in this country where we see an individual who wants to run this country singling out groups for attack, criticizing the press, making fun of handicapped people. In those moments, there is a call for moral clarity and moral language. And the moral clarity that we have and that brings us here today will allow us to answer the objections that we hear, the objections that fill the sky with why we can't actually save lives. We hear that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Ridiculous.
But we know that there was a good guy with a gun in their lives. We hear objections of good faith, that we need to look after due process and the constitutional considerations of American citizens. And they're right. We do need to do that, but we can do that. That is our job. The reason that we are not being allowed to vote is because all of those objections collapse quickly. We can address them, we can show them to be specious, we can get it done. And they know that, which is why we are not allowed to have that conversation. Because for the opponents of taking the measures that we need to pass to save lives, fear is what must obtain. It is fear. Fear that somebody's coming up your stairs and the only way you're going to protect your family is to have a gun under the bed. Fear that there are people outside your home who would invade it. Fear that the police can't adequately protect you. Fear, fear, fear. That is the only reason we are where we are today. Fear.
You know, right?
The antidote to fear, of course, is optimism and moral clarity.
Jim Hunt
And
from
so I'm
Connecticut.
so proud to be here with John Lewis, with John Larson, and with all of you, my colleagues, taking this moral stand, because it is how we will prevail. And I swear to God that when Americans are lying in pools of blood day in and day out, that is a time for moral clarity.
May you be known by the company you keep. I have never been so honored just to listen to our colleagues. What an honor to be with all of you. The company we keep is the best that America has to offer. But there's much more that we need to do collectively on this floor. Our next speaker is Ted Lieu. After Ted Lieu,
Ted Lieu from Los Angeles.
From Donna Edwards, who has a letter from Gabby Giffords to read. Ted.
You have Ruben here also?
We are gathered here to ask for simple fairness from our Republican colleagues. We just want our constituents to have the dignity to have their elected representative cast a vote on gun safety legislation. That's how our democracy works from the founding of America to the present day. The American people debate the great issues of the time. Their elected officials cast votes on those issues. The American public has a right to know where their member of Congress stands on gun violence. And we are tired of doing moments of silence and thoughts and prayers for every mass shooting. Since Newtown, there's been over 1,100 mass shootings of 4 people or more. Every day, 297 people are shot in America. That means the next 5 minutes, someone in America will be shot. Who will that be? Will it be someone you know, an acquaintance or a loved one? Will it be a child playing outside or someone dancing in a nightclub? Now, I am not unaware that different members have different districts, and some of our Republican colleagues have hard districts and hard lives. They've got to, deal with extremists in their constituencies. They have to raise money from the NRA. They have to stand for re-election. And to those people I say, our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Yes, very good.
A little technical delay in Donna's letter, so we're going to go to our next speaker, Tony Mordoza.
Tony Cardenas from Los Angeles. Put it closer to your mouth.
You got this. I want to remind our great country why we are all here. I've never heard a person running for office in the United States of America who does not say, profess, or promise that the safety of our communities is what they're coming to fight for. I'm very proud to be an American, but it saddens me to admit that more people die from gun violence in America every day, every year, at the hand of a gun than any other place on the planet. You would think that that would be reserved for a country that doesn't have a government. The United States of America has a government. We have elected officials. But one of the reasons why more deaths, more harm come to people in America at the hand of a firearm is because certain politicians, after making that promise and getting elected to the United States Congress, they deny their responsibility of working with the truth. In 1996, it was a Republican-controlled Congress that defunded the Center for Disease Control. They said, you shall not, you will not report to Congress on the issues of gun violence. Shame. We will not fund you. We will not allow you to take the best minds in America, the professors in our best universities, so they can report to Congress with the facts as to why so many people are dying due to gun violence. That's been 20 years, ladies and gentlemen, 20 years of forced ignorance, 20 years of denial of the truth. It was just a couple of weeks ago that I very proudly announced that the next generation of my family has just begun. My beautiful daughter and son-in-law just had their first son, our first grandchild, and this is what he looks like. He's a beautiful, handsome, healthy little boy. What I pray for him, what I pray for my grandson, is that he never comes to his mother, his father, his grandparents, or anybody he loves and says, "Why did my friend die?" I did that when I was a little boy. Why was Rudy killed by a rifle right across the street from our home? I had to ask my parents that question. Why did Rudy die? He was a boy, not yet a man. And for the last 20 years, this Congress, this Republican-controlled Congress, has refused to allow us as policymakers to work with the truth, with the facts. I will not relent. I will not allow another 20 years to go by so that my grandson would ever say, "Grandpa, why did my friend die? Grandpa, aren't you one of the ones that are supposed to make sure that we're safe?
Yes.
Aren't you one of the ones that is supposed to make sure that my friends don't die?" As little boys and as little girls, we just had Father's Day this past Sunday. A beautiful day of celebration, of family, of life, of gratitude. But every year in the United States of America, there are 32,000 more empty chairs on Father's Day because that's the number of lives in the United States of America who perish every single year at the hand of someone with a firearm.
Right.
Why? Why, ladies and gentlemen, would we allow that to happen? Why would we stand for that? Politics is not the truth. Facts are the truth. The blood of 32,000 people in America every single year is the truth. We are the most powerful nation on earth. We're admired for our democracy. We're admired for being number one in so many ways. But we should be ashamed of ourselves because we are number one in deaths due to firearms. And there's no other place on this world who holds that disgraceful fact. Ladies and gentlemen, Americans, please, please, please do not relent. Please remind me and her and him and every single member of Congress that we shall make our streets safer.
Yeah.
We shall pass laws that are sensible.
Yeah.
That not every person should have a firearm. There's not a person today there's not a person today who has said on this floor that they do not believe in the Second Amendment. Not one person today has said that they do not believe in the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court of the United States has determined over and over and over that Congress can and shall make reasonable laws to make sure that our streets are safer. That's what today is about. That's why we've had enough. That's why we're sitting on the floor of Congress, pleading with our Speaker to do the right thing, to allow the debate to happen, to allow votes to take place, so that American voters, American citizens, people who have participated in our democracy can look into the eyes of the people that they voted for or voted against and say, I was right, that person believes in a safer America, or I was wrong, that person does not believe in a safer America. For the sake of the children who die in the United States of America due to handguns, more than any other place on the planet, let's not give up. Let's continue the fight. Let's do our jobs. Let's not worry about our next election. Let's be concerned about the lives of the boys and the girls and the men and the women and the fathers and the brothers and the sisters and the grandparents. We all made a promise, Republican, Democrat. We've all made that promise that we will make our streets safe. We promised that they could sleep at night. We made that promise, every single one of us. And the majority of this House refuses to keep their promise. Let's not give up, ladies and gentlemen. Let's continue this fight. Let's stay on this floor as long as we have to make sure that we make our streets safe in America.
In this order, Donna Edwards will read her letter from our great colleague, Gabrielle Giffords, and then Mike Honda, Joe Crowley, and will be the next speakers in that order.
Thank you, John, and thank you to John Lewis and Catherine Clark and David Cicilline and to all of us who are here. When I came to Congress as a domestic violence advocate, having started the National Network to End Domestic Violence, I remember in 1996, we worked hard to pass a domestic violence offender gun ban. And many members were here when we did that. We didn't know that today we would leave open a loophole that is as gaping as can be, so that the same domestic violence offender who can't buy a firearm in a retail establishment can go to a gun show or on the internet or on the street and buy a weapon. That's why we're here today. And I thought it was bad enough when my co-worker called me in the middle of the night because her domestic abuser had run her out of the house with a gun. And I thought it was bad enough that my own family member was held hostage in her home by her domestic abuser with a gun. And I thought it was bad enough that the granddaughter, a little 6-year-old girl, granddaughter of my neighbor, had to walk through the blood of her mother, dead on a floor, at the hands of a domestic abuser. And I thought it was bad enough that my colleague and classmate I sat next to in our science committee, Gabby Giffords, could lose almost everything because we can't do anything. And so today, Gabby sent to all of us a letter because she wanted us to know that she's with us. And she said, with our technical difficulties, It's dated June 22nd, 2016. Dear member of the House and former colleagues, there is nowhere I would rather be right now than with you. On the floor of the People's House, representing Southern Arizona, fighting for our country and working to make our communities safer. But your action is the balm for my regret, and it is the inspiration for my continued commitment. Fighting gun violence takes great courage. I've seen great courage when my life was on the line, and I see great courage in many of you right now. Americans are grappling with a gun violence crisis. It is a crisis that tears apart the lives of so many Americans and touches every community. It is both public and private, in our homes and on our streets, at work, at church, at movies, at a dance club, at a school, and at a school again, at a Congress on your corner. The victims are young and old, but always with so much life ahead of them. They are white and black and Latino and Asian and Native American. They are lesbian and gay and bisexual and transgender and queer and straight. They are Christian and Muslim and Jewish and Sikh. They are veterans and government workers and union members. They are rich and poor. They die by murder, they die by suicide, and they die by negligence. Often they don't die, but they carry the scars and their lives change forever. If gun violence affects all of us Americans, then the solution is not up to just some of us. We are responsible for our safety today and for the country we pass on to our children tomorrow. It's what makes us a country, where our country has already come together behind the simple proposition that we ought to have laws that keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. So must our Congress, and they should not waste another minute. We must not accept the world that will be the product of inaction in Washington. We can do better. Some states have already made progress. They show us that when we put aside our incidental or momentary differences and stand shoulder to shoulder, we have enormous power. It has been said that hope was forged of two powerful ingredients: anger at how things are and courage to change them. We will not be driven backwards to live in isolation from one another and in fear of violence. To you and millions of Americans who share our values.
We're about to have votes, guys. I'm going to have to turn off. You go to C-SPAN. I promised I would turn it off if they turn the cameras on. If they turn us off afterward, we'll be back.
It's difficult for me, but I haven't been silenced, and neither should the American people. Their representatives must vote to prevent gun violence. Sincerely, Gabrielle Giffords, Americans for Responsible Solutions.
On the way, everyone's setting up the vote. So it should be interesting. Probably will be back.
I think the plan is to turn these off as soon as C-SPAN goes on. That's the deal. We were just broadcasting because they cut the cameras and the microphones off. So once those are back on, I'm going to turn off and allow C-SPAN to carry this.
Mike Honda, followed by Joe Courtney.
Yeah, Mike.
Oh, Mike.
Thank you, John. Let me just start out by saying first, to our floor staff, for their just admonition that we don't break the rules of the floor. I just want to thank them for their patience and acknowledge that they're doing their work, but to let the country know, to acknowledge that we're breaking every rule in the House, because it's about time that we break those rules in order for us to be heard in this country. Too often we're scripted in what we're going to be saying. Too often we're stymied by the rules of the House. Today we're breaking the rules.
And one more time, the video, the Periscope video has frozen. That was Beto O'Rourke's video that we were watching at the very end there. He's a Democrat from Texas. All evening, this has been Periscope video that's been shot by Democratic members of the House of Representatives. This is not C-SPAN video. The House cameras, which are controlled by the House, have been turned off because the House is in recess. So Democratic members who have taken the floor have been broadcasting their own via the app Periscope. And we have been carrying that all live, all night, all day, for the last 10.5 hours now that this sit-in has been going on. And if the cameras come back, we will continue to bring it to you live. Now, the House of Representatives is looking at a 10 p.m. Eastern Time in time tonight to vote on unrelated legislation. In the meantime, though, we want to take your phone calls. You can see the numbers there on the screen. 202 is the area code.
Here. Hi there. I am so disgusted with the Republicans who will not even allow a vote in the Senate or the House. We had 49 innocent people killed a couple of weeks ago in Orlando. 2 years ago, we had 20 innocent children and 6 teachers killed in Sandy Hook. When is it going to stop? The only way it can stop is for Congress to do their job. I watched the filibuster, and I'm watching what's happening in the House today, and I am so proud of all the Democrats who have stood up and have said enough is enough. What I am not proud of is the Republicans who don't seem to understand that until there is a vote no fly, no buy, and a vote to keep terrorists from being able to buy guns, the same things that happened in Sandy Hook and the same thing that happened in Orlando is going to continue to happen. Someone has to stand up sometime. And I'm so proud of the Democrats. I am proud of Hillary Clinton. And those of you who think that she is a liar or any of the other things that have been said about her, you are wrong. And she is the hope for this country. I see that Senator Booker is on TV right now, and I want to hear what he has to say. But I am absolutely convinced that if we don't have a vote voting down assault weapons, we will have more deaths.
And that is on the far right there holding the sign with the beard. That's Representative Al Green, a Democrat of Texas. Hank Johnson is the gentleman with the red tie in the center. He's a Democrat from Georgia. And that was Gwen Moore, I believe. Can't quite see the video. Yes, Gwen Moore, a Democrat from Wisconsin, who was speaking at the podium. Let's go back to this Periscope House Democratic feed.
To my colleagues,
speak, Don.
As I stated earlier this afternoon,
Don Payne from New Jersey.
This is the proudest day of my time in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I probably came to the House of Representatives in the worst way you could possibly get here. By the loss of my father. But I am proud. I am proud to stand here today because of the people at the Pulse nightclub. A young man
29 years old. His name was Darrell R. Burke II, also known as DJ. He attended high school in Georgetown, Kentucky, was currently living in Jacksonville, Florida. Earlier in the day, he graduated with a master's degree. And so, to celebrate, he and his friends decided to go to the Pulse nightclub. Received his master's degree that afternoon and lost his life that night. As I stated earlier, in the 10th Congressional District of the state of New Jersey, which I am the proud representative of, I am not proud to say that 1/3 of the gun violence deaths in the state of New Jersey happened in my district. 1/3 of the entire state. And we have some of the most stringent gun laws in the country. Those guns come up Route 95. They come 80 west, 80 east into New Jersey. And we have to deal with the profiteers. Yes. The profiteers. Yes. That allow loopholes for criminals to go into other states, get those armaments, and bring them back to the state of New Jersey because the profit is higher there.
And the House is back in session. These are the House cameras.
The chair appreciates that members will differ on matters of policy and will seek to express those differences. But the chair would hope that the business of the House could be conducted in a fashion that respects positively on the dignity and the decorum of this institution to which we all belong. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Rogers, seek recognition? Pursuant to the order of the House of June 8, 2016, the unfinished business is further consideration of the veto message of the President on House Joint Resolution 88. The clerk will report the title of the joint resolution.
House Joint Resolution 88, joint resolution disapproving the rules submitted by the Department of Labor relating to the definition of the term fiduciary.
The question is, House on reconsideration passed the joint resolution. The objections of the President to the contrary notwithstanding, the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Klein, is recognized for 1 hour.
The American people today protect access to affordable retirement by voting to override the President's veto. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question.
The gentleman from Minnesota yields back. The question is on ordering the previous question. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from Minnesota. A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on ordering the previous question will be followed by a 5-minute vote on passing the joint resolution. The objectives of the President to the contrary notwithstanding, this is a 15-minute vote.
And what they're voting on now is unrelated to the House Democrats sit-in that has been occurring. Speaker Ryan is establishing or attempting to establish regular order. You heard all the noise. You know what's going on. We're going to continue to take your phone calls about the Democratic House sit-in. Adam's in Plainfield, Indiana, on our Republican line. Adam, go ahead. Go to them. Let's try it one more time.
He told police weeks and months before that electro forces were talking to him. He'd been arrested numerous times for violent behavior, and yet he was able to get his hands on a firearm to go inside a military installation 10 minutes from here. You can walk there in 10 minutes to Washington Navy Yard. A week ago last Friday, there was a change of command ceremony where the admiral who was there that day retired. It should have been a happy day to celebrate over 30 years of service in the military. And instead, the families of the victims were in the audience, and they wept. They wept over the pain that they went through that day, and it cast a shadow over that event like it does over and over again. But remember, we talked earlier today about schools, churches, nightclubs, but even in a fortress, the Washington Navy Yard, one of the oldest military installations in America, George Washington commissioned our first 6 Navy ships at that Navy Yard. Where are we supposed to go? When people ask, why are we doing this? Yes. Because we have no choice. No choice. There's no place that you can be safe in this country until we get sane, rational gun violence prevention like the 2 bills that we are begging to take up and act for consideration. Go by that Navy Yard tonight and ask yourself whether or not you are doing what the people need in this country. The answer is, if you're not bringing up this bill, you're not. No bill, no break.
Okay, Joe. Gregory Meeks.
Yeah, Gregory Meeks. I've never been more proud of my colleagues here tonight.
They turned the mic off again, but that's okay.
Coming together
that's
like
okay.
this, all of you, showing your concern.
Gregory Meeks.
Now, you know, I couldn't say this if we were in session because they take my words down. But I'm mad as hell at those Republicans because you know what they are? They're cowards. They're cowards. That's what they are. They don't want to be on record. They don't want to be on record showing where they do
democracy for which they live. Why are they allowing their people to die? I must admit that it was just a few weeks ago where I had my hopes up at a memorial service for Muhammad Ali. When I was at that memorial service with my friend John Yarmouth, and I know Maxine Waters was there, we saw this nation coming together. We saw people, Native Americans, African Americans, Hispanic, whites, Jews, Muslims, Christians, all there memorializing the life of a man who decided that he had to stand up and speak out no matter what the cost. And I had pride in that. Just a short time thereafter, we had the horrible shootings in Orlando, Florida. My heart was heavy. I was headed to D.C. but could not make it here. I heard about the communities in New York, the LGBTs getting together in the Village. I said, I can't come down to another place in Washington, D.C. just to hear a moment of silence. Let me go where people's hearts were heavy. Let me go where folks were standing and said we need a vote to end this gun violence. And so I went there to renew my spirit, the same spirit that I had when I was in Louisville, Kentucky. And then we come back here and we didn't have a vote. And I got a word from John Lawson. I got a word from John Lewis. So let's get together. That it's time to get in the way. That it's time to make a difference. That it's time to let the American people know they do have a voice in this house. And tonight we hear this voice. And so as I listen to some, looking at social media, talking to some, they ask, well, why are we doing this? Some say you shouldn't do it. And I scratched my head. They said, why? They said you can't win. You don't have the votes. They said you must be crazy. They said you're wasting your time. Well, I come back and I say, when I looked at John Lewis in 1963, when he was almost beat to death, they said he couldn't do it either, but he didn't waste his time. That's why America's better today. Right. When I look at what took place in this country, once upon a time, they said women would not have the right to vote, and they didn't have the right to vote. But women stood up and made sure their voices were heard, and today they can vote in this place called the United States. I looked at what took place with reference to African Americans. They said they couldn't vote. In fact, the Constitution initially said they were only 2/3 of a human being. But we changed the Constitution. And so I say today, as we look at what we're doing today, we can win and we will win. 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 I leave with this. And I said this earlier, but I just want to repeat it because someone said about the lessons that we teach our young people. So if you got a young person in a classroom and one young person has a stick and that one person is utilizing that stick against everybody in the classroom, what is the right thing to do? Do you take that stick or do you arm or give everybody in that class a stick? Well, common sense will tell you. You don't give everybody in class a stick. You take the stick from the one person that was trying to harm the rest. Let's take the guns from the people that are trying to harm everybody else. We can win. We will win.
Dr. Foster. Joe Foster.
Well, thank you all for everything you've done tonight, and thank you also to my Republican colleagues who've stayed to listen to this important debate. We differ. We differ from our uncivilized ancestors, not by our DNA, but by our rule of law, our morality, and our science. The legal case and the moral case for stopping gun violence has been made by John Lewis and my Democratic colleagues with more eloquence than I can ever muster. Because the truth is that I represent my district in Illinois with all of the charisma of a typical PhD physicist. But the scientific fact is that gun violence is a preventable epidemic. The American Medical Association, the AMA, has called it a public health crisis. The American Society of Pediatrics has called for stronger gun laws and research into gun violence prevention. But Congress has prevented the Center for Disease Control from funding research even to start understanding the roots of gun violence. And as a scientist, I am disgusted that we are deliberately muzzling this important and productive area of scientific research, simply because the Republican majority in this House is afraid that they might not like the scientific answer. But you do not need to be a scientist to know that universal background checks with no exemption for internet sales are a good idea. And you do not have to be a scientist to understand that anyone on the terrorist no-fly list has no business buying guns. So the scientific conclusion is simple. Meaningful criminal and psychiatric background checks and no-fly, no-buy.
Brad Sherman. Brad Sherman is recognized. Brad Sherman will be followed by Dave Lopezak. Just want to add my voice to all those who are saying no bill, no break. We don't have a microphone, do we? How did that happen? We are here occupying this floor not because we're stopping business, but because they're stopping business. The business of this House is to express.
I know it's hard, but try to have some class and some respect for your colleagues.
Find the courage. Yeah.
Way to go, Linda.
The gentleman who interrupted should recognize that this should be a debate in the formal House. This microphone should work, the rules of order should apply, and then we should have a vote. Yes. The purpose of this House is not to ignore the obvious concerns of the American people.
Big joke.
Once again.
It's a big joke, isn't it? Big joke on the floor, Doctor, isn't it?
Once again.
A lot of people dying, a lot of people dying, a lot of victims. This ain't no joke. This ain't no joke. This is no joke.
Keep laughing. Children are dying, Doc. They're dying, Doc. Keep laughing, Doc. Keep laughing, Doc. Stay on the floor and keep laughing.
No bill.
If I can continue, this is not a great moment for the House of Representatives. This is not regular order. Order has broken down because we have a speaker who will not allow us to vote. We saw the first responders in Orlando. They had courage to charge in when you had an assailant with an assault rifle. We should show some pale shadow of that courage by being able to stand up to the American people and show them where we stand. Those who don't want to vote, what are you afraid of? How little courage do you have? How much courage does it take to push a green button or a red button and tell your constituents where you stand on whether terrorists should be able to buy weapons? Of the legislation that should be before us, we should be concerned about the civil liberties aspects. There is a right to travel that the courts have found in our Constitution. There is a Second Amendment, and neither of those should be taken away from an American frivolously. That's why when we come to deal with this matter on the floor of the House, we should
let us speak. Let him speak. Let him speak. Let him speak.
I know the gentleman is afraid of what I have to say.
No fly, no gun. No fly, no buy. No fly, no buy. No fly, no buy. No fly, no buy.
It appears as if the gentleman is afraid to vote and afraid to debate. And given the weakness of his arguments and his position, his fear is well-founded. on these issues.
Just a vote.
With equal time talking about radical Islam. Radical Islam killed these poor people.
No fly, no gun. No fly, no gun. No fly, no gun. No fly, no gun. Stop terrorists from getting a gun. Why do you want to let terrorists buy a gun? Why do you want to protect terrorists from buying a gun?
Are you going to stop?
Why do you want to let terrorists from buying a gun? Why do you want to let terrorists buy a gun? Why are you protecting terrorists?
Are you going to stop the sale of machetes?
Take the mic.
Let's take on radical Islam killed these people. If you know
a terrorist with a gun. Don't let terrorists have a gun. Don't let terrorists have a gun. Don't let terrorists have a gun.
David. Lois, it's not a good spot to sit.
Can you do it now? Sorry.
Hey, Peter, were you a reporter in your last life? She was.
What a journalism certificate in high school.
Is that mine or yours? Mine's there. You want it? Mine's there. I know.
Oh, this is rich. Oh, I think this is terrific. There's so much them out.
Recognize Joe Loughran from California.
Let her speak.
Let her speak.
Let her speak. Let her speak.
Separate. Billy. No.
I am amazed to be part of this. I can't be louder. I am amazed to be part of this day-long experience. It's an extraordinary event today. And the reason why
Louder, Zoe.
It's an extraordinary event, something that has not happened in the Congress before, is because we are facing an extraordinary bloodbath in our country. We've talked about it, we've heard tremendous rhetoric here, great soaring oratory, and I really can't add that. I've heard about the thousands of people, but I'd like to talk about just one mother, and how I could not explain to her why her son was killed by somebody with a gun, which he should not have had, because of his domestic violence and his mental condition. We are here because we need to make our country safer. The one thing we all know when we come here is that our first obligation is to keep America safe. And that's why we're actually demanding a vote just on two bills. If you're a terrorist, you should not be able to buy a gun. You can't get on an airplane. You shouldn't be able to buy an assault weapon. That's pretty easy. To buy a gun because of your background and the background checks, those checks ought to be in place everywhere, not just somewhere. So these are not radical ideas. These are things that would keep our country safe. And we hope and we pray, and actually we demand, Mr. Speaker, no bill, no break.
still up here. He's still standing. Everybody give John a big round of applause.
Hey, John.
I got a lot of friends on the other side of Dave Bratt, we'll talk about this tomorrow at the gym, okay? All right? Dave Bratt over there. You know, look, we got friends on both sides of the aisle here, folks. There's no doubt about that. But I got to tell you what's going on tonight. I mean, this is something that we've had to do probably for quite a long time. You know, I really appreciate Greg Meek saying the things that he said about Muhammad Ali. What we're doing tonight is standing up and speaking truth to power, a lot like Muhammad Ali did. You know, he was my personal hero. I had the opportunity a few years back to say that to him to his face. It was very difficult for me to do that, but because of the state that he was in, but I did it. And I've been in this body for 10 years. I took a selfie of me and John Lewis and I sent it to my wife tonight because John Lewis is such a tremendous inspiration to everybody in this body. And when I first got here and when he called me brother, I started to cry. I mean, John Lewis to call me brother. Are you kidding me? This is amazing. But that's the kind of guy he is, and he stands for all these great things that we're trying to stand for tonight. And the fact of the matter is, later on, folks are going to be reading from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from that prison. So these three folks, it says it all tonight, I think, that we're going to be talking about those folks and what they stand for. They inspire all of us so much. But I came to the floor this morning because I really wanted to make sure that we had a vote on gun safety legislation. And I came back tonight to demand that we have these votes on gun safety legislation. And in the meantime, Speaker Ryan was on CNN and he called what we're doing a stunt. I was actually taken aback in some ways. To call this a stunt is really to belittle what is happening here tonight. And it's to demean it, and it's to diminish it, and it's to try intentionally to take away from the significance of what we're doing tonight. All we are asking for is a vote, folks. There's nothing about this that's a stunt. This is a reality. We're talking about 32,000 deaths a year. Yes, we're talking about 49 in Orlando. This is not a stunt. This is serious business. This is the people's house, as has been said over and over throughout the day. We demand a vote. The people want to vote on these issues, folks. That's why we're here tonight. This isn't a stunt. This is as far from a stunt as we can possibly have. So we're serious about this, folks. We're serious about this. And look, let's have a vote. It may fail. You know, Speaker Ryan said, well, this already failed in the Senate. My response is, so what? So what that it failed in the Senate? We are the people's house. We deserve to have a vote on these issues tonight. And guess what? If we have a vote and it passes, I think that the Senate will reconsider, because we are not tonight mobilizing not only people in this body, but thousands and hopefully tens of thousands of people around this country. And senators will listen if we have a vote and if it passes. I have every confidence that that will happen, folks. That's why I'm here tonight, so I can speak out on this issue, so I can speak for those folks who've been victims of gun violence, for the survivors, for the families, for all the rest. And I thank John for organizing this. I thank all of you who've come tonight. I thank all the folks in the audience. When I got elected 10 years ago, this is the last we need to do, folks. No bill, no break, no fly, no buy. That's what this is about, folks. Thanks, everybody.
There's nobody in this body that dignifies grace and personifies grace, and in her demeanor and in the way that she conducts herself. And I want to say to our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, we're here tonight out of respect. We respect you. All we're asking for is a vote. Mitch McConnell gave the Senate votes. It allows people to express where they stand on an issue. We, as many speakers have said, understand that you have the votes. You have the majority. All we're asking is to express our opinion on behalf of the citizens we're sworn to serve. That's fundamental. And that's all we're asking for. Doris Matsui.
Thank you so very much, all my colleagues here tonight and all through today. John Lewis, you have been my hero for such a long time. I didn't participate in the first sit-ins, but this one is absolutely historic with you. To sit in the House of Representatives chamber is totally remarkable. And may I just say this, my colleagues throughout the day and tonight, I couldn't be prouder to be a member of this body, to understand what it means to be an American and to be able to express your fears, your doubts, and your hopes. And that's what it's all about tonight. When I think about these issues, I think about the people that have been affected. And mostly, I think about the children. In particular, with the mass shootings that occurred, but particularly with Newtown, Sandy Hook, because there were young children going to school. And I know all of you have had the experience of buying your children or your grandchildren their backpacks. How proud they are of their backpacks and the things they put inside their backpacks. Very, very special. And I was thinking about that when that tragedy occurred because my grandson was that age at that time. I was thinking about that when that tragedy occurred because my grandson was that age at that time. Loved his backpack. And I just imagine how it would be if we sent him to school with all the hopes and dreams that we have for our young people. And he didn't come home. So where is the doctor, the teacher, the scientist, the person who can actually discover the cure for cancer?
Yep.
I am looking at this realizing that my grandchildren, both Robbie, who's now 9, and Anna, who's 12, are the touchstone as far as I'm concerned to the future. And what I believe is that every Anna and Robbie in every neighborhood in this country deserve to feel safe.
When they go to school.
Deserve to feel safe when they go to school, they go to the movies, they go to church, they go shopping. And the thing that really got me in particular was, I think most of us try to shield some of these bad things from our children or our grandchildren. But they hear about it. And when the slaughter happened at Sandy Hook, Robbie asked me, what happened? Is it safe to go to school? Can you imagine having that thought? Is it safe to go to school? So that's why I feel it is so important to demand the vote so we can say we are doing this for the sake of our children and our grandchildren and the future of our country, because that's where it lies, with our children and our grandchildren. So I, along with my colleagues, demand we have a vote. A vote. No fly, right? No buy. We're going to have many travelers this summer. Families going on vacations with young people. Do you want to be sitting next to somebody who is on a no-fly list? I don't think so. I think for the sake of our families, our children in particular, we demand a vote. We demand a vote. We should not go home for the sake of our families, on our grandchildren, our children. If we don't have a bill, no break.
No vote. No break.
No bill, no break. No bill, no break. No bill, no break. No bill, no break. No bill, no break. No break.
Right and board.
I think there must be a mistake. Surely there must be a mistake. Because I don't know how in the world I'm lucky enough to call you a colleague, Mr. Lewis. And to stand here, actually to sit down with you beginning 11 hours ago and begin this. This in no way compares at all to everything you've done in your life. But just know that it is an honor, as someone who may not have been born at the time that you were acting in such a heroic and courageous way. Thank you for what you did then, and thank you for what you're doing today.
Well said.
I can't believe that we have to resort to this. I can't believe that in a place that I was raised to believe and do believe is the greatest country in the world, we are the country that by far leads the world in gun violence. And most of that has happened in my lifetime. Of the 25 highest casualty killings, mass shootings, 24 of them have happened in the last 30 years. We have a Second Amendment. We were able to exist as a country for 200 years with one mass shooting. And now in the last 30, 24. And it's now at the point when another one happens, many of us have reached the point where we say, well, I'm not surprised. And then we come here, we have a moment of silence, but no moments of action. Well, no more. I didn't anticipate coming up here to speak. I was perfectly content to just do my part as a soldier for most of this day. But I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you who have joined us in the gallery, including some of you I know who are the parents or relatives of those who have been the victims of gun violence. More Americans have been touched by gun violence in the last 30 years than all those who were killed in all of our wars combined. There is a stain on the soul of America, and we must heal it, and it begins tonight. Thank you.
Bring it, preacher.
Well, to all of our colleagues who are here, and it's good to see so many of you sitting around. It's good to be joined by several of our Republican colleagues who are sticking around as well. To everyone that's up in the gallery, thanks for the courage of staying with us tonight, and everyone who's assembled outside and standing strong for calling this Congress to act. A friend of mine a few minutes ago tweeted me a photo that he saw of John Lewis online, and in it, John, he oddly enough put a little quote from Winston Churchill. But in it, he said this: courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. Tonight we've had the honor of sitting down and listening to our colleagues share stories, tragedies across the country. We've had an opportunity to sit down, try to figure out what it's going to take for us to have some profiles and courage maybe shown in this 114th Congress. I certainly hope that everyone here is taking the time to use your God-given ability to hear and to listen to the profound nature of where America is. Because earlier tonight, I was very saddened when our very own Speaker Paul Ryan took to an interview on CNN with Book Blitzer and said that tonight Speaker Paul Ryan said that this was a publicity stunt. You know, Speaker Ryan, I think you should maybe reach out to the recent victims and families of Orlando. Tell them this is a publicity stunt. People like Leroy Valentin Valdez, 25 years old. Mercedes Marisol Flores, 26. Peter Gonzalez Cruz, 22. The other 46 victims in this tragedy in Orlando. You know, John, you got us earlier tonight and you said this. Sometimes you have to do something out of the ordinary. Sometimes you have to make a way out of no way. There comes a time when you have to say something, when you have to make a little noise, when you have to move your feet. This is the time. Now is the time to get in the way. The time to act is now. We will be silent no more. And you called us as Democrats to the House floor to bring the voiceless a voice. Well, for everyone that's watching, and Beto, I want to thank you again, and Scott Peters, Mark Takano, for taking this to the American people, because the American people might not realize this. We should remind them yet again. These microphones are off. C-SPAN is not running tonight off the cameras that are in the House chambers, not because someone at C-SPAN made a decision not to run this tonight. As roll call reported earlier today, the decision on whether the cameras in this chamber are on is a decision made by the House Republicans in the majority. Turn the cameras back on. Turn the microphones back on. So that people across America can hear what's happening on this House floor. So when Speaker Ryan's office puts out a tweet today that says it's customary that when we're in recess the cameras are turned off, what everybody saw is when the cameras were still turned on is that the presiding Speaker of the House walked out of that chair and then the cameras turned off. You can turn the cameras off, you can take the microphones out, but you can't take the fight out of us. John, thank you for being the inspiration we need. Thank you for making us come to the floor tonight, because you called for something deep within us. You, David Cicilline, Catherine Clark, your examples. My mom sent me a tweet a few minutes ago, said she's praying for us. She's praying for us to do the right thing. I bet a lot of our moms are out there praying for us right now to do the right thing. And I just want you to know, just so maybe you have some comfort where the American people are. CNN reported that 92% of the American people are in favor of expanded background checks. CNN reported that 85% are in favor of banning people on the federal terrorism watch list from buying firearms. Now, this one might surprise you. While that number was only 85%, CNN reported that 90% of Republicans are in favor of banning people on the federal terrorism watch list from buying firearms. People. Let's stand tonight and do the right thing. Let's ask for that vote. No bill, no break. No bill, no break. Let's do the right thing, everybody.
Thank you, Ben Ray. From California, Sam Carr.
They're taping out of that.
Thank you very much. Thank you all my colleagues for this whole day. I have been in Congress for 22 years, and as you know, I'm retiring. I don't think I've been more proud of this House and the minority in this House, the Democratic Party, for demonstrating how we need to take back this Congress so that the voice of the people can be heard on the floor. And regardless of the attempt to shut off this microphone and to shut off the cameras, because of the incredible ability to use social media, the American public is being able to understand what is going on here. I also want to remind people that are in the gallery, even our incredible turnout of our press corps, which is remarkable, more so than we see in most incidents on the floor, that this is an election year. Every single member of Congress, their contract is up for renewal in November. Every single member. People ought to be taking a look at their voting record. Why don't you take a look at the NRA voting record of members of Congress? You'll see that the people that are speaking here today, who are great scholars when they were in universities, in studies of law and medicine, and many other professions, were at the top of their class. They got A's. They're valedictorians. And now they're walking around with the letter F from the NRA. Proudest F they ever received. Every newspaper in this country ought to be publishing that voting record. Because they'll see that what we're doing today is a demonstration that is boiled on this floor for decades. When I first arrived, we had a very controversial bill, the President Clinton's crime bill. And in that, we banned assault weapons. Very controversial vote. Unfortunately, that ban was sunsetted after 10 years. Everyone thought, well, it worked well. Assault weapons couldn't be sold anywhere in the United States. And we'd regain it. But with the Republican leadership at that time, they wouldn't even allow for a vote. Wouldn't even allow for a vote to renew that ban. So our frustration has been mounting year after year. And in this election year, we're not only electing legislators to Congress, we're electing legislators to state governments. And I'm very proud to be from a state, California, which has the most number of people, about 36 million people. And I would imagine with that population, probably the most number of members of the NRA, National Rifle Association. Probably, if people do have legal guns, they probably have more than any other state. And yet that state legislature, elected like we are in the same day, have been able to go to the state capitol in Sacramento and ban assault weapons. Ban assault weapons. They've been able to enact background checks. Congress hasn't been able to do that. They've been able to limit the number of ammunition in a magazine to 10 rounds, not 20 or 30 like it was used in Orlando. So state legislators, stand up, be proud, start enacting laws that your elected officials in Congress can't do. And take note of those members that are speaking out today, trying to bring just one simple amendment, one simple clause that say, if you are on a terrorist watch list, you can't buy a gun. This isn't anything. People will give you all kinds of excuses about sale of guns to people who shouldn't have them. I want to apologize to my colleagues as I had to leave the floor for several hours. I left because I was being honored tonight by the Colombian Embassy here in Washington, D.C. Because I started my public service as a Peace Corps volunteer in Colombia. At the time we started, there was no violence in Colombia. I served in Medellin. Medellin ended up during the violent period of Colombia being the murder capital of the world. What I was so proud tonight, not only being honored by the Colombians for all the work I've done here, but I'm proud of what Colombia did today. Do you know that they are, after all this long war, the most expensive civil war in modern history? They've worked out a peace agreement with the enemy, with the FARC. They're doing that tomorrow in Havana. I mean, this is just remarkable that we can have other governments go through and eliminate the causes eliminate the warring factors and sit down and talk about how you have peace. And in that, obviously, there's going to be a lot of gun legislation, gun restrictions. Why can't we, in the United States Congress, just enact one little simple measure? People of this country, if you like what you're seeing here tonight, You can thank us by your actions in November when you vote. And for my Republican colleagues, let's use this process. Let's let bills come to the floor. Let's debate them. What are you afraid of, an up or down vote? Shutting down this House is so un-American. And my colleagues that stand behind me and around me and sit here tonight and will be here, I think, all night, I'm so proud of you. Proud to be an American. Proud to be a Peace Corps volunteer. Proud to be a member of Congress. Thank you very, very much.
David Price from North Carolina. Thank you, John, and thank you for being the MC extraordinaire all day today, helping bring each of us to the podium to say what's on our hearts and minds about one of the most serious challenges I think our country has faced. John Lewis, thank you. John and I came in together. Didn't take us long when we were the freshman class and we saw some reporters approaching. It was about John Lewis. It wasn't about the rest of us. John was a hero then, he's a hero now, and that it's something that has been an experience that we'll always treasure, serving with John Lewis, and we appreciate his leadership here today. Now, this is an extraordinary thing that's happened here on the floor of the House today, but extraordinary situations call for extraordinary measures. Arguably, we should have done this long ago, but something has changed. We've had the largest mass shooting in American history in Orlando, Florida. 49 people gunned down by a deranged and self-proclaimed ISIS sympathizer, someone the FBI had interviewed and monitored before. He legally had gotten his hands on a weapon that has no place outside the battlefield. Shouldn't certainly be in the hands of a potential terrorist. Now, we've heard a lot of political talk about this. People worry about the terminology the president uses when he talks about the threat that we face. We hear a lot of incendiary, inaccurate statements about a religion with more than 1 billion adherents internationally. What we haven't heard much of from our Republican friends is reasonable solutions to the threats we face as a nation from those who are intent on manipulating loopholes in our law to kill innocent Americans. Well, now we have two practical suggestions, the two bills that we're promoting here tonight, saying that people on that terrorist watch list, people suspected of terrorism, have no business buying any weapon, let alone an assault weapon, and that the porous background check law that leaves 40% of gun purchases unchecked on, that needs to be repaired. Now, some will plead the Second Amendment, but this amendment is not threatened by anything we've proposed, no matter how you interpret the Second Amendment. My colleagues, your right to free speech, what right is more precious than that? But that right doesn't give you the right to yell fire in a crowded theater, as a famous jurist once said. We treasure our freedom of religion, but that right doesn't give you the right to subject your child to dangerous practices. So there's nothing in the Second Amendment that says we cannot protect our communities, that we can't keep weapons out of the hands of those who vowed to destroy us. So, we are here tonight, in a sense, in memory and in honor of those 49 innocent individuals taken for us far too soon. And we're here in determination to prevent further massacres, future massacres. I want to rise particularly in memory of Shane Tomlinson. He's a native of Ms. Lowy's district, but he's a proud graduate of East Carolina University in my state. He was gunned down in this preventable massacre. I want to remember Tevin Crosby,
a native of Statesville, North Carolina, whose life was taken too soon because this Congress refused to protect the American people. And then I want to close by remembering Eddie Justice, and I want you to listen to me. Eddie was a 30-year-old accountant, and he texted with his mother for what must have been the most terrifying 44 minutes any parent could possibly endure. And I'm going to read you what he texted. 2:06 a.m. Mommy, I love you. In club. They shooting. 2:07 a.m. Trapped in bathroom. Pulse, downtown. Call police. 2:09 a.m. I'm gonna die. 2:19 a.m. He's coming. I'm gonna die. 2:40 a.m. Still here in the bathroom. He has us. They need to come get us. And that was the last message. How can anybody hear those texts from a terrified son and still not be compelled to act? How can we continue to harden our hearts? Please, let's move these bills.
Javier Becerra. Joe Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. I thought I'd speak just for a couple minutes this evening about a man that used to work in a hospital next to my district. Michael J. Davidson was a cardiovascular surgeon at Brigham Women's Hospital. He had 3 children and a 4th on the way. On January 20th, according to the Boston Globe, less than 3 months before his child was born, Davidson, who was 44 years of age, was shot to death in an exam room by a man whose mother he performed surgery on several weeks before. The woman passed away, and the individual believed that Dr. Davidson was responsible for her death. So he went to the hospital. He called the doctor, brought him out to a lobby, pulled out a gun, and shot him twice. His wife, after the shootings in Orlando, wrote a letter that she asked me to read tonight. In the words of Dr. Terry Helper, for 10 months after Michael died, I had intractable insomnia. 4 children, a full-time job as a surgeon, running miles a day, and I couldn't sleep. I could generally fall asleep initially, but I would wake up at 1 or 2 a.m. In my head, I saw images of Michael in the exam room with his killer. I imagined what he must have thought in those moments when he was first shot. I pictured him running as I was told that he had done. I saw his injuries. I cried thinking of his pain. That happened every night for a long time. During the day, my heart would race for no reason. My fingers would go numb. I was having panic attacks, something I had never experienced before. I jumped out of my skin every time I heard a loud noise. I cried all the way through the 4th of July fireworks because they sounded like gunshots. I haven't written much in a while. I have been doing better. I've been comforted by my love. But this week, I have been shaken. I have cried in my car every day. I have listened to all the news reports on the shootings in Orlando, and I have cried. I've cried for all those families who will see the images of their loved one's murderer in their head. They may not have been there, but they will see it. They will close their eyes and witness their last moments. They will see the panic. They will feel the pain. I am sorry to all of the mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, spouses, children who are asking why. Why has this country done nothing to prevent gun violence? I am proud of Representative Jim Himes for walking out during the moment of silence in the House. We have been silent too long. Wake up, Congressman. Your nation is calling, and we are angry. We want something done. Terry, we hear you.
Linda Sanchez. Any due process for the people?
Can we just
in the
make some
gallery?
reference here?
Any due process?
Members of the public in the gallery, members of the Republican Party are getting democracy does not work in a way you can identify individual people that you don't want to and throw them out. Shame on you. They are entitled to be here. This is their house.
Due process. Kick anybody out.
You can't kick the public out. This is their house. They have a right
It's
to hear
uncomfortable.
this.
You don't like it, but you can't kick them out.
This is our democracy.
Linda Sanchez.
I want to start this evening by thanking my colleagues who have had the courage to be here since this morning to stand up for an issue that is of such critical importance to this country. And I want to thank Mr. Lewis, civil rights icon, for leading us in this effort. Now, I have to say that the Republicans sadly have called Congressman Lewis's desire to be here and to have this conversation a dilatory publicity stunt tactic. Well, you know what's really dilatory? The fact that House Republicans refuse to address, much less acknowledge, this public health crisis by holding a vote or even a hearing on the matter. As the mother of a 7-year-old boy, it pains me to think that my son could be one of the 48 children who are shot with a gun every single day in the United States of America. I want my child, I want all children to grow up in a safe and secure environment where they don't have to fear being gunned down by a civilian carrying a military-style weapon, firing military-grade ammunition in a public place. Today, Democrats are here courageously to ask the House, what is our priority? Because you know what, last week in the House, we debated how the military sets the menu in their cafeterias. And I'm not kidding. Days after the tragedy in Orlando, we spent the time of this body debating something called the DoD Food Service Program Manual. And the question that day was whether the Pentagon can figure out on its own how to feed its troops, or whether it needs Congress to micromanage their cafeterias. It's our time as a body to debate military menus. Surely we can make time on this House floor to debate how to keep our families safe from gun violence. You know, the NRA has painted Democrats here today as criminals for calling a House vote on gun control legislation. Well, the question that I have for the NRA is, what is my crime for asking for the safety of my child and all children? And what about the rights of thousands of people who have lost their lives to gun violence, and the families who have to grieve and pick up the pieces in the aftermath? How we can stand here and not even hold a vote on sensible gun legislation after what happened in Orlando boggles my mind. Yet the Republican majority who controls the House schedule cannot find the courage to have one single vote. And it's worse than that because they don't even want to do research on gun violence, let alone any problem solving on gun violence. Right now, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention cannot study gun violence. How absurd is it that in one of the greatest countries in the world with so much innovation brought forth by so much great research, we cannot research gun control? Well, I'll tell you why they don't want us to research gun control, because the facts lead to the inescapable conclusion that gun control works at preventing gun violence. That's why they don't want research on gun violence. The Republican majority, for some reason, seems to think that holding moments of silence and expressing sympathy is enough to wash their hands from their complicity in the murder of thousands of Americans. Let me say this loud and clear. Those who obstruct sensible legislation and who do not allow a simple floor vote are complicit in these American tragedies. You bear responsibility for these American tragedies. The courageous Democrats who've been here all day have said status quo is unacceptable. And they have taken great pains to present the names and the images of those who have been mowed down with gun violence and say, we will make sure that their lives were not lived in vain. I thank my colleagues for having the courage to do that today.
While we're waiting for Javier to return, Yvette Clark.
I'd like to ask my colleague, Hakeem Jeffries, to stand here. I'd like to ask my colleague, Hakeem Jeffries, to stand here with historic. Today has truly been historic. Historic in the way that Democrats have come together to understand and to put forth to the American people that the status quo was not acceptable. That coming here to Washington each and every week, where we ignore the pain of the people in our constituencies who have lost their lives, their family have lost the lives of loved ones. Many who we have not discussed today are maimed by gun violence. And we have to turn to, of course, our moral leader, Mr. John Lewis, and thank him, Kathy Clark, John Larson, for really gathering us here to do what we knew we were compelled to do anyway. It is so very important that we send a signal to the American people that there is a distinction between members of Congress. There are those who are willing to stand up at any point in any time to say that the innocent taking of life, that taking the life of innocent people through gun violence is not something we can abide with. That coming here week after week after every killing, every mass killing, to have a moment of silence, if we were absolutely honest and took a moment of silence for every moment that someone is gunned down in America, we'd never have an opportunity to speak with one another. We know that today is a defining moment for this Congress. There are those who would come to this floor and mock what we're doing today. Well, they'll have to answer to their own makers for that. But I want to share with you an incident that took place in my lifetime. There was a wonderful man in the borough of Brooklyn, and he was a police officer, he was a corrections officer, but most of all, he was a community activist that loved his community. He began to see an uptick in violence in our community. And so what he did on his own was he began to mobilize. he started parades in the community. And the parade was called Love Yourself, Stop the Violence. Love yourself, stop the violence. Well, this man became very popular in Brooklyn, New York, and ultimately got elected to the New York City Council. I had an opportunity to serve with Councilman James E. Davis, and before all of his colleagues, before the Speaker of the City Council, before Mayor Michael Bloomberg, James E. Davis was gunned down. Gunned down in the chambers of the New York City Council. And from that day forward, the chemistry of the body, the chemistry in our town has never quite been recalibrated. So when we come to the floor, we have all raised our hands today to say that we have been impacted, that we have in some form or fashion been traumatized by what we have allowed ourselves to become, which is callous about human life, and that we have become senseless in terms of our ability to make a difference. I don't believe that that's the case. I know that we can make a difference. I know that with expanded background checks, that we can make a difference. I know by putting terrorists on a no-fly list and making sure that they don't have access to the purchase of guns, we are making a difference. And for those who would make excuses in this day and age for why we cannot act, for why we will not vote, all I can say is that you'll have to answer to that with your maker. We will continue. We, people of goodwill, will continue to fight this fight until the day that legislation is passed here in the House of Representatives, until the day that assault weapons are banned once again in the United States of America. I want to yield at this moment to my colleague, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries.
I want to thank my distinguished colleague.
Brad Evans says it's all about finishing.
We're creating so many chances, and chances we know can change games and it can change the course of a season. So I know that we've been dwelling on that pretty hard. The guys are working on finishing today after training, and once that clicks.
And a vote to keep terrorists from being able to buy guns. The same things that happened in Sandy Hook and the same thing that happened in Orlando is going to continue to happen. Someone has to stand up sometime. And I'm so proud of the Democrats. I am proud of Hillary Clinton. And those of you who think that she is a liar or any of the other things that have been said about her, you are wrong. And she is the hope for this country. I see that Senator Booker is on TV right now, and I want to hear what he has to say. But I am absolutely convinced that if we don't have a vote, voting down assault weapons, we will have more deaths.
And that is on the far right there holding the sign with the beard. That's Representative Al Green, a Democrat of Texas. Hank Johnson is the gentleman with the red tie in the center. He's a Democrat from Georgia. And that was Gwen Moore, I believe. Can't quite see the video. Yes, Gwen Moore, a Democrat from Wisconsin, who was speaking at the podium. Let's go back to this Periscope House Democratic feed.
You know, Ross,
what is that? From California.
We're still bad population, probably the most talk about this.
Yeah.
You should not be able to.
That legislation is passed here in the House of Representatives until the day that assault weapons are banned once again in the United States of America. I want to yield at this moment to my colleague, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries.
I want to thank my distinguished colleague from New York, Yvette Clarke, for her eloquent words and for standing here on the floor of the House of Representatives with all of our colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus who are here to give voice to the feeling that so many people all across America have had, which is enough is enough. And it's time for this Congress to get off of your hands and do something about the gun violence epidemic that exists in this country. More than 30,000 lives each and every year as a result of gun violence. I'm proud to be here with John Lewis. When I first came to the House of Representatives in January of 2013, just to be able to serve with a legendary American hero like John Lewis was such an honor. And he said to me on the House floor, he said, "Young man, are you the new guy?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Are you from Brooklyn?" I was tempted to say Brooklyn is always in the house. But I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I've heard some good things about you, but let me just say this can be a tough town, and so I don't want you to get into any trouble unless it's good trouble." And I'm here today to say, John Lewis, we join you in getting into good trouble on behalf of the American people. Because it's unacceptable to have a situation where we've got 5% of the world's population, but 50% of the world's guns. And we can't even, in the aftermath of the carnage down in Orlando, take a vote on behalf of the American people to prevent suspected terrorists from being able to purchase guns that are not used to hunt deer, but are used to hunt human beings. Because people on the other side of the aisle would rather function like wholly owned subsidiaries of the NRA, as opposed to functioning on behalf of the American people. Now, you know, Dr. King once said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And I think what Dr. King was saying is that in this world you've got some good folks, and then you've got some difficult folks. But all you need for righteousness to prevail is for a few good folks to stand up and push for justice. And we know the history of the civil rights movement taught us that in the face of trying to make change, there were people who stood in the way. George Wallace stood in the way. Jim Clark stood in the way. Bull Connor stood in the way. But guess what? The good people prevailed. And so even if the House Republicans want to stand in the way, good will always prevail. So the question is, you ask the question, why are we engaging in a sit-down? We're sitting down so that democracy can stand up. We're sitting down so that righteousness can stand up. We're sitting down so that truth can stand up. We're sitting down so that victory can stand up. And we're not going to leave this House floor till the American people get the vote that they deserve. God bless America.
Didn't that sound like a student of John Lewis's? Members of the House, the Dean of the House of Representatives, the gentleman from Michigan, the original founder of the Congressional Black Caucus, former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, currently ranking member, John
Respect the Dean.
Thank you, my brothers and sisters. In 1968, the greatest man I ever knew was killed by a senseless act of gun violence.
Yes. Dr.
Martin Luther King. And I fought for 15 years to honor his sacrifice. I introduced the first bill to make his birthday a legal holiday. I fought alongside over these 5 decades with the likes of Shirley Chisholm, Julian Bond, Jesse Jackson Jr., and John Lewis. Knew him before he came to Congress. Today, this has been the most unusual moment in my 5 decades in the House of Representatives. Our brothers and sisters are being mowed down by guns. Thousands of people in our country every year die unnecessarily. We will fight as long as it takes to honor their lives and protect every American. And we'll fight together with people like Lewis, but all of you are the heroes and sheroes of what we can do and will do from this moment on. In all my 50 years or more, I've never seen us come together like this in the House of Representatives. Because all the Republicans have offered, these victims are moments of silence. And we will not be silent anymore. No bill, no bill.
Javier Becerra, followed by James Levin, followed by Steve Lynch. As chairman of the Democratic caucus.
To our former chairman of the Democratic caucus, who has conducted this the way any chairman should do it, John Larson, thank you for bringing us together. So I've heard it said so eloquently by so many of the champions of this country. So let me say something that I think is important for America to hear, because this doesn't happen very often. And I see so many people here so late at night, more than 12 hours after this began, who keep coming in. And to each and every one of the people who is sitting in this gallery, please understand, this does not happen very often. In fact, quite honestly, in my 24 years, this has never happened. And so please recognize what you are doing. You are here with John Lewis. You are here. You are here making history. You are here making history because from here we will not leave until history is made, and we have an opportunity to vote on a bill to give America sensible gun legislation that will help keep people alive, so we will not see another Orlando, so we will not see another San Bernardino, so we will not see another Newtown, so we will not see another Columbine, and so that tomorrow we will see our child in the morning. We will wake up to see our loved ones go to work. We will be able to tell them, have a great time at that club tonight. We will be able to tell them that they will grow up to be doctors and teachers and members of Congress and President of the United States, because they will go to school and come back home and grow up to be our leaders.
But what's fantastic to all my colleagues who are here is that when we started this more than 12 hours ago, there were people outside supporting us, small groups. If you haven't been outside lately, you should, because we have a mass grouping of people who are out there right now, not here hearing us, but out there waiting for us because they are gathering. And I guarantee you tomorrow, there'll be more. And so, this is history. Welcome to history. On most occasions, you would not get to clap. You would not get to cheer. You would not be able to express yourselves. But this is the people's house. And maybe it took a shutdown of this house by the leadership of this house for the people of this country to be able to express themselves fully in the people's house. And so, John Lewis, these are your people. They are following you. They know what you fought for. We understand why we are here. And maybe when this House decides to finally do its work the right way, we don't need to worry about having you clap and cheer. Maybe you'll be able to go home and feel proud about this house. But tonight, this is your house. You cheer, you clap, you urge us on because we intend to succeed.
From Michigan, ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, followed by Steve Lynch.
Well, I'm glad because this is an unprecedented moment. Experience of all of us, even those who go back to John Conyers. This has never happened before. Never. Two things should be said. Number one, we Democrats have talked with each other more, perhaps than ever before. We're more united than we've ever been to a country. And secondly, I want to say this. It's hard to know when there are turning points. It's difficult to know. Contrary to what the speaker said, this conduct, he said, is a publicity stunt. No, I say to the Speaker, the Republican Party conduct today is a public shame.
It's a public shame.
It is a public shame.
Public shame.
John, we've known each other going back to Mississippi 45 years. So I want to say this carefully in view of your heroics. We're never sure when there's a turning point. But I think there's a real chance. I started after the Kennedy assassination and the Martin Luther King assassination in the state Senate 45 years ago or more to see if we could undertake gun control. It never has really happened, but I think it may well be happening now. I think this may turn out to be
a Selma-like moment relating to gun violence in the United States of America? I think maybe so. And so we're here tonight because I think there's a real chance that history is about to be made. Gun violence in this country needs a turning point. And we Democrats are going to stay here until it happens. John, you led this country. Selma, you're now leading us, I think, in a Selma-like moment. May this turn out to be a turning point. Gun violence in this country must be turned around, and we will never leave here until that happens.
Steve Lynch will be followed by Pete Visklowski, who will be followed by Patrick Murphy.
Thank you, John, and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. There have been a lot of stories told here tonight, and as you see behind us, all these beautiful young people, and there were earlier pictures of the kids from Sandy Hook. They all tell a story. And all night you've been seeing members hold up these signs with names, the names of victims of gun violence. This is my family's story. This is Brian Havlin, my younger cousin. He was gunned down not last week, but in 1996. He left an infant daughter, who's a grown woman now, grew up never knowing her dad. He left a wonderful family that loved him desperately. And I think that's part of what has not really registered with a lot of people with these moments of silence until perhaps tonight. I've not carried that burden in my heart, but I've been close enough to witness it. And that's what we're fighting against tonight. All the disaster that gun violence has caused in this country over far too many years. I want to say thank you to John Lewis. Look, I'm kind of a rules guy, and I have enormous respect for this institution, this Congress that I am so blessed to serve the people of my district and the people of this country. And so I had trouble with the idea of a sit-in in the House of Representatives in the United States Congress. But when they shut off this microphone and when they shut off the cameras and would not let members of Congress stand up for the people who sent us here, right? Well, then it's time to get into some good trouble, as John Lewis said. So, John Lewis, thank you for getting me right with the idea of a sit-in on behalf of people and families who have been victims of gun violence all these many years. And what is really shocking when you think about it, what is really shocking is the modest changes that we're asking in our gun laws in this country on the 3 bills that I happen to be a co-sponsor of, that we're trying to, this whole fight is about getting 3 bills onto the floor, and all we want to do is talk about them and have a vote on them. That's all we're asking. We're not forcing anyone's hand. We just want open debate on this floor of the people's house. The first bill is pretty simple. It's only a couple of pages. It says that people on the terrorist watch list shouldn't have weapons. How radical is that? How radical is that? The second bill says that we ought to check on the backgrounds of people before they get weapons so that we can determine that psychologically they can handle the responsibility of having that weapon. And the third bill that I'm also a co-sponsor of says that the CDC should do a study on gun violence as a health issue because we're losing so many Americans to that disorder. Now, I will be the first to admit that those three bills won't solve everything, but they're a good goddamn place to start. So the one thing in common that these kids, the faces behind me, and my cousin Brian, the one thing they have in common, is they can't speak for themselves.
That's right.
They can't speak for themselves anymore.
Right, that's right.
So that is our job to speak on their behalf and on behalf of their families. And I'm enormously proud to be a member of this body. God bless you all for being here, and God bless these United States of America.
Gentleman from Indiana, distinguished leader on our Appropriations Committee, Peter Visklosky.
Thank you very much. It is a privilege to follow one of my colleagues who ironworked in the 1st Congressional District and stole about half of the remarks I wanted to make to my Democratic colleagues. And I have only one request, and that is do not accept half measures. During the day, was given a list of people who have lost their lives through gun violence since December of 2014. We cannot bring them back. I'm told that 89 people a day, 89 people a day in the United States of America lose their lives because of gun violence. I was given a gentleman's name, Matt's name. I don't know a thing about what Matt's life was like. All I know is he doesn't get to live the rest of it. We cannot bring any of these back. But we're members of the greatest body on the planet Earth, and our responsibility is to those living today to make sure they are alive Friday morning and not lost to gun violence. Do not accept half measures. My concern is we have talked about no bill, no break. But from my perspective, and I speak only for myself, it is not enough to just deal with the issue of the terrorist watch list. It is not just enough to make corrections and improvements in the weakness of the background check. It's not enough to continue to try to improve mental health services in the United States. It's not enough simply to deal with the problem of large capacity magazines. It's not enough to just deal with assault weapons as far as the prohibition of their future sale, manufacture, and importation. We need to take a holistic approach on this issue so 89 more people do not die of gun violence during these next 24 hours. Two of the first three words of the Second Amendment that have been repeated over and over and over again is well regulated. Well regulated. It is time to regulate firearms well. Thank you very much.
From Florida, Patrick Murphy.
Thank you, John, for your leadership. I want to thank all my colleagues for their leadership, for standing up for something that is common sense. Right, there are a certain amount of issues that we deal with here on a day-to-day basis that are actually pretty tough. Right, we have ideological differences with our friends on the other side of the aisle. But then there's things that are common sense. Closing the terrorist gun loophole is one of them. I think back to freshman orientation. As I look around the room, I see a lot of my classmates from 2012 when we were first sworn in. But I want everybody that was there in that orientation. There were 49 new members of Congress there. And we sat there at orientation. We're learning the basics of how to become a member of Congress. Right, what to do, how to vote, how to do an amendment, just the basic stuff. And our colleague, Elizabeth Esty, stood up in tears and ran out of the room. And we all started getting alerts on our phones that Sandy Hook had just happened. And we all sat there. I still get chills thinking about that day. And we all promised that at a minimum, we're going to have some basic votes on mental health, more funding, making sure that we have background checks, make sure we reduce the magazine sizes, make sure we do something with these weapons that are meant for war and purely war. And we haven't had a single vote here in the Congress. Right? It is past time that we at least let the members speak. This is the people's house. As one of my colleagues referenced earlier, this is not normal for everyone in the crowd. This doesn't happen enough. Right? This passion you're seeing is what's needed to get people to wake up. Right? There are so many issues. There are so many issues that we face. One of the committees I'm on is the Intelligence Committee. We sit there every day and we come up with the funding to make sure that the CIA, the NSA, that the FBI, that all law enforcement has the resources they need to protect this country. And we are proud to ensure that American taxpayer dollars is going to do that. So then we identify whom these suspected or known terrorists are, and then we allow them to go buy a weapon anywhere they choose, in a gun store around the corner. How in the world does that make any sense? There's no logic there. Right? These are the common sense bills that we've got to pass. Right? That there's a couple no-brainer issues here that we can make a difference on. So I sure hope our colleagues, our friends on the other side of the aisle, do not continue to pander to the NRA, to these interest groups that I believe are largely responsible for the 32,000 deaths happening a year in this country. And look at these pictures. Right? Think about what happened in Orlando. Think about what's happened around this country. Right? I would love for the Republicans to go look the families in the eyes of these victims and tell them that they couldn't do just something a little bit more to prevent this from happening. Just some small incremental step to prevent this from ever happening again. Right? We can do better. We owe it to the American people to do better, to try. So I urge you all to let this come up for a vote at a minimum. Thank you.
Good job.
Nikki Songus, followed by Lucille Robillard Allard, followed by Deborah Dingell. Nikki.
Well, thank you, Mr. Larson, and thank you to John Lewis, our esteemed colleague who's played such an important role today, and Catherine Clark, my colleague from Massachusetts, and David Cicilline from Rhode Island. It's great to see New Englanders up here, along with John, who's done such a great job sort of leading us in this effort. And I have to say, as I've sat here all day, I have really been struck by how many of you have such personal stories of loss. It makes it all so ever more real. But I think we have to remember, and we've all come back to it, just the places in which these terrible crimes have taken place. In a movie, many of us can imagine being. In a workplace where we want our daughters and sons to go off, get jobs, go safely to work. In a church where so many of us spend our Sunday mornings or other parts of the weekend. To a school. I don't think there's a person in this room that can't imagine, has a hard time imagining losing their 6-year-old. And to the LGBT community who was simply having fun in a nightclub. And we've heard over and over again those who represent large cities in which people are lost on a daily basis. My constituents look at this and see this and are so dismayed that we do not act. And when they ask me why that is the case, I hesitate to give any excuse. So it is a wonderful thing to be here today, to finally be able to say, well, we are standing up and demanding action. I remember John Lewis as we were debating and leading up to healthcare reform and the important vote that we were taking. And Mr. Lewis got up in front of our caucus and said to all of us in the room, and there were many still struggling with what their vote would be. And he said, you know, I know you're asking why you're here. And he said, because history has called you here. And he said, and you have one thing, and that you can exercise in behalf of the American people. And he pulled out his voting card. That is what we are asking for today, to have the opportunity to use our voting cards and register how we feel about gun safety and bringing sane change to the gun laws of this country. So, no
flag.
No bill. No break.
No bill. No break. No bill. No break. No break. No break. No break. No break. No break.
Lord Allard.
First of all, let me say, John, I want to join the colleagues and thank you, John Larson, and all my colleagues for this incredible day. You know, it has been said over and over and over again, not just today by Democrats in Congress, but by the vast majority of Americans, that it is long past due to make sensible gun control a national priority. I represent parts of Los Angeles County, a county which has had 482 gun homicides last year, and the cycle continues. Not too long ago, Officer Ricky Galvez from the city of Downey, a Marine who had done two tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, had come back home, joined the police department, and was sitting in his car when a gunman came and shot him dead. And as we've been simply asking the Speaker to give us a vote, I was informed by Lieutenant Turner of the Newton Division, a police station in my district and one that also serves Congresswoman Karen Bass, that another killing took place. A man had a rifle, he was shooting it in the air. Another man came and asked him if he would please stop doing that. And instead of stopping, he turned the gun on the man and shot him in the head and in the body. This harsh reality is a reality that far too many families in my district and in communities around the country live with every single day. There are parents in my district, and I know this is true of others in other parts of the country, who are afraid to let their children play out in the yard because they may be killed by a stray bullet. They have them play inside the house. But even in the house, they're not allowed to play by a window because a bullet may come through that window. And at a very early age, they teach their young children that the minute they hear anything that even sounds like a bullet, you drop to the floor. No American family should have to live in fear this way. And at the very least, what we are asking today, and what every American should be able to expect, from their member of Congress that we will at least do everything we can to prevent terrorists from having a gun. That is why we Democrats are standing united to demand that Speaker Ryan and House Republicans respect our right as members of Congress to at least have a vote on bipartisan, common sense legislation that will help to prevent gun violence. Democrats are ready to vote on bills to strengthen our background check system and to keep guns out of the hands of suspected terrorists. There is no excuse, absolutely none, for not fixing clear and dangerous flaws in our gun laws. No more delay, no more excuses, no more moments of silence. It is time for action. Democrats stand together, we stand strong, and we stand with our constituents. Democrats say, no fly, no buy, no build, no break. The American people deserve no less.
The great state of Michigan, Debbie Dingell. She will be followed by Carolyn Maloney. And then that will complete. Is there any member who has not spoken for the first time?
John.
Then what about a round of applause here for Beto?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Still at it, eh, Kevin?
I am. Till the end.
I've been on the floor for 12 hours, and I can't believe what I never actually thought I would sit on the floor of the House of Representatives. And it's been a tough day in some ways, but it's also, you know, when Orlando happened, last night, I have to say to you, I sat with Amy Klobuchar, who I am working on a domestic abuse gun bill with, and said, it'll never change. It's another horrific shooting. We're all going to say, isn't this terrible? We'll offer our prayers, and we'll go back to normal, whatever the normal is we've come to accept, and wait until the next shooting. And yet, today we showed that that's not what's going to happen. We also always let the big things, and as so many of my colleagues have talked about, we don't focus on what's happening every day. We don't focus on the daily shootings or how our young people are beginning to accept that that's just what happened. And we don't focus on what's happening and who has access. I feel this House is torn in a way that I feel torn. I'm married to a man, you all know how much I love John Dingell. He's the most important thing in my life. And yet for 35 years, there's been a source of tension between the two of us. He is a responsible gun owner. He believes in the Constitution. I don't want to take his gun away or anybody else's gun. But I lived in a house with a man that should not have had access to a gun. I know what it's like to see a gun pointed at you and wonder if you were going to live. And I know what it's like to hide in the closet and pray to God, do not let anything happen to me. And we don't talk about it. We don't want to say that it happens in all kinds of households. And we still live in a society where we will let a convicted felon who is stalking somebody of domestic abuse still own a gun.
Take your time.
I have a million thoughts as I sit in front of you here today. I have constituents who get labeled.
Yes.
Who are on a do not fly list and may not be right. I do not want a terrorist to have access to a gun. But how can we protect somebody's civil liberties if you won't come to the table and have the discussion about how you keep them safe? The point of this discussion is that we've got to stop going to our corners. We've got to stop spouting talking points. And we've got to come and figure out how we're going to make this nation safer.
Yes.
How we're not going to accept the violence that we're seeing every day. How we're not going to let people have access to guns that shouldn't have access to guns. And we're not going to do it until we start to change the dialogue.
Yes.
Till we come to the table and we have the discussion. So we're here on this floor tonight to say enough is enough. I didn't talk about what I grew up with for many years. It took Newtown, and I went and I wrote an op-ed. People knew I didn't like guns. I probably even said as a child some really stupid things, although many of you probably would agree with some of what I said. But I know now, we can't stay silent any longer.
We can't.
We have to do something. I've never seen us more united than we are today. And I love my husband with my whole heart and soul. He doesn't know I'm standing here right now. And I love my Republican friends. I love you all. Can't you come to the table? Can't we have a discussion? Can't we say enough is enough? Can't we have a vote?
She said she didn't know whether she wanted to speak or not. John Dingell. When they shut off the cameras, Scott, Beto, and Mark made sure that they took to the well, and we're filming this and streaming this on Periscope. It's a new one for me. I didn't know what Periscope is.
It's the Periscope
But it was a song about the yellow submarine. But nonetheless, Beto O'Rourke.
Beto O'Rourke from Texas. I'm taking over his feed for his speech.
Okay. You're being filmed.
Video.
When the cameras were turned off and the microphones went down, Scott Peters and I and many others turned on our phones. And Scott is streaming this on Periscope. I'm streaming it on Facebook. Right. And something that really strikes me is not just the thousands of people who are watching what we are doing here, but the thousands and even tens of thousands of people who are vigorously debating these issues on Facebook, on Periscope.
Absolutely.
And it's a debate that has critical urgency to it. And I know that the people who are here with us tonight, who are in the gallery, who are outside, have been having this debate for years. And they have felt an urgency to this debate. The only place in the country where we have not had this debate and where there has not been this urgency has been on the floor of the House of Representatives. Until today and tonight, thanks to John Lewis, thanks to Catherine Clark, thanks to David Ciccarelli, thanks to John Larson, and thanks to these amazing colleagues that I have the honor to serve with. My uncle, Raymond O'Rourke, was a sheriff's deputy, and his proudest achievement was winning the Sharpshooters Marksman Award. He was the person who taught me how to shoot. And that man loved his guns and cherished the Second Amendment. But Raymond O'Rourke understood that you can defend the Second Amendment and still make sensible laws to protect lives and improve public safety. The people that I represent in El Paso, Texas understand that. The people in America get that. But just in case I'm wrong, I've got Republicans in the chamber tonight, I have Democrats in the chamber tonight, and I have some amazing Americans who are joining us in the gallery. So let me ask you, should the Centers of Disease Control be able to study gun violence so that members of Congress can make informed decisions on gun safety? Should every and any American who wants to purchase a gun, no matter where he or she gets it from, have to go through a background check?
Yes.
Should we be able to protect the people that we serve, our fellow citizens, from assault rifles whose only purpose is to kill and to maim? And let me ask you this final question. Should we be able to keep the people who we think are too dangerous to board a plane and to fly with us back home to our districts or to come here to Washington, D.C., from being able to buy a gun?
Yes.
One of the toughest moments I had after taking this job 3.5 years ago was putting my son, Ulysses, to sleep. And I was leaving on an airplane to come back here the next day. And he said, "Dad, why did you want to take a job where you weren't going to see us so many days, so many weeks, so many months out of the year?" And that question has stayed with me every single day. What I do here, I want to be worthy of my son, my daughter Molly, who just turned 8 35 minutes ago. Do here to be worthy of the people that I represent, who put me in this position of public trust.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, there's been no moment in the 3.5 years that I've been here that I have felt that what I am doing and what we are doing together is more worthy of that sacrifice that our family members make and is more worthy of the trust that the people we represent place in us. So thank you, John Lewis. Thank you, colleagues, for allowing me to join you here today. And to my kids who are home tonight, hopefully in bed.
To them. Happy birthday, Molly.
I don't know when we'll be home, but I know that it's okay. And I know I can justify that to you. And I know that we won't be back anytime soon, because if it's no bill,
No break.
it's no break.
No bill.
Carolyn Maloney, followed by North Dakota.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Nice job, Room.
Thank you, John. Thanks for leading us so brilliantly. Now the speaker can turn off the microphones, and the speaker can deny us a vote on gun safety, but he can't tell us how to vote. He can't take our values away, or what we stand up for, or who we stand up to. And we are standing up to the speaker and saying, give us a vote.
Yes.
Now this country is reeling from these attacks. Over 32,000 people each year die of gun violence. Yet in the House of Representatives, with the leadership of the Republicans, it is business as usual. Total and complete silence. And we are here to say we are tired of silence. We want action. We've had 11 moments of silence with 11 mass shootings. We are saying enough is enough, and that is why we followed our great friend and colleague, John Lewis, and Congresswoman Clark down to the floor of Congress for a sit-in. And those of us who know John know he will never give up. He will never stop until we get a vote on the floor. And we thank you for your wonderful leadership. Now the majority plans to recess. So what are we supposed to tell the families of Orlando and Newtown? That they are too busy with their fundraising, with their meaningless bills, rolling back consumer protections, trying to roll back Dodd-Frank. They're too busy to have the responsible votes that we need on gun safety. Since 1968, more Americans have died from gun violence than in all the wars in this country's history. This is unacceptable, and the American people want action. Let's give them that vote. No fly, no buy legislation is a no-brainer. Keeping dangerous weapons out of the hands of those who would do harm to others is a no-brainer. Earlier this year, I put in legislation with Senator Markey, who joined us on the floor with many other senators today, that merely says we should reverse the Republican-led vote to deny us the right for the Center for Disease Control to study gun violence. I would say there is no issue that is so controversial that it cannot be debated, voted on, and studied in the United States Congress. How stupid can they be to deny us the right to study ways to make us safer? We study plane safety. We study car safety. Why can't we study gun safety?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Now, if guns kept America safe, America would be the safest country in the world, because we have more guns per capita than any other country in the world. But compared to other economically advanced nations, this country is awash in the blood of our own that we permit. Between 2001 and 2013, guns killed more Americans than AIDS, war, and illegal drug overdose combined. When are we going to act? In the last 50 years, gun violence killed more Americans than died in all our wars. And of all the children killed by gun violence in all 23 of the world's most economically developed country, 87% of those children that were killed were American children. And now 49 are killed, over 50 wounded at a nightclub in Orlando. Now earlier, I represent New York, and just yesterday, they stopped a car because the window was broken, and they found a cache of guns, machine guns, all kinds of guns. Where were these guns going? Maybe the next car won't have a broken window shield and won't be stopped. We have more guns per capita than any other country in the world. And so we say no buy, no fly, no vote, no break. And let's say the American people demand that here in the People's House we act to save their lives. The number one role of government is to protect our citizens. Why aren't we taking the guns out of the hands of deranged and mentally ill people with comprehensive background checks? Why, if someone is so dangerous and can't fly in America, they shouldn't be allowed to have a gun. And so today we say enough is enough. How many more people have to die? How many families torn apart until Congress finally says enough is enough? Congress must not leave Washington without voting on common sense gun violence prevention to keep the American people safe. No bill, no break.
No bill, no break. No bill, no break. No bill, no break. No bill, no break. No break. No break. No break. No break.
In closing, New Yorkers went to Stonewall. Stonewall was the site of the modern gay rights movement in America, a historically important site. And I went down there with others to lay flowers and to remember. And I thought this will be the turning point. Like the Pettus Bridge was the turning point. This will be the turning point, and they will finally act. But they didn't act after 23 children were killed. They didn't act after people were mowed down in a movie theater, or that when our colleague Gabby had her own town hall meeting, just like all of us are probably going to have this week or this month, and they just won't act. But I believe today that this is the turning point, because John Lewis will not leave the floor, and I will not leave the floor until they give us the right to vote. If they want to vote against it, let them vote against it. But give us the right to vote, give us the right to study, give us the right to protect our people. No fly, no buy, no break. Thank you.
To Mark, who's been doing the filming all day, I want to say to our colleagues here, after Mark, we'll be starting our second round. The second round is, just getting your win now?
Yeah. Come on, man. Let's go. Come on, Larson. Come on, Larson.
This is when the tough get tougher. We get going here. But I want to say that for people that have been on this force since 9:30, we've passed the 15-hour mark.
Nice.
And I'll tell you, nary a sign of fatigue on anyone's face, because you know what? Our members have energized us with their stories. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll be very brief.
What?
My friends, it's an honor to be with you, and to stand with you.
Put the microphone closer.
Just for appearance sake.
Yeah,
okay.
no fatigue.
It's an honor to stand with you. A few hours ago, I'm told that Speaker Ryan went on national television and called this sit-in a publicity stunt. It's not a sit-in. It is a wake-up call. Let me try that again. It's not a sit-in. It's a wake-up call. Clearly, we need to remind him why we are here and why we won't allow this body to conduct business as usual. We are here because when 27 children and teachers are slaughtered in Newtown and this Congress did nothing, it was business as usual. We are here because when 9 churchgoers were murdered in Charleston and this Congress did nothing, it was business as usual. We are here because when 14 people were killed in San Bernardino, which is right next to my hometown of Riverside, California, this Congress did nothing, and it was business as usual. We are here because when 49 people were killed at a gay nightclub in Orlando, and I have to say this, many of my Republican colleagues pretended that it was not a gay nightclub. Right. They blotted out the fact that it was a gay nightclub. They glossed over the fact that it was a gay nightclub and went to the talking point that it was about terrorism. It was a gay nightclub.
Yeah.
And it was a hate crime. And while we are focused on gun violence, we are not dealing with the hate. That is for another day. But we have to deal with the hate and keep the haters away from guns. We need to disarm hate. So when those 49 people were killed at a gay nightclub in Orlando, this Congress did nothing, and it was business as usual. We are here because every single day in urban cities and rural towns across this country, dozens of people succumb to gun violence. And this Congress does nothing, and it is business as usual. We are here tonight because mass shootings and daily gun violence cannot be business as usual in America, and it is time for this Congress to do something. The American people are smart. They know that stopping dangerous people from purchasing firearms does not infringe on the Second Amendment. They know that every purchase of a firearm should include a background check. They know that if Republicans are hiding, they are hiding behind absolutism over guns, hiding behind the NRA, hiding behind procedure, hiding behind parliamentary procedure to stop us from even taking a vote so the public can see where we stand. Parliamentary procedure should be about the will of the majority, not hiding behind procedure. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is not a publicity stunt. This is a wake-up call. This is a reminder of our basic duty to protect the American people, a responsibility we have failed to fulfill. We must disarm hate. We must disarm hate. No bill, no break. No bill, no break. No bill, no break.
No bill.
Let me give you our list of people in the order that they've come and asked to speak. And if I miss someone who wants to speak again, come back and see me. But if there's anyone on our side who has not spoken yet today,
I'd like the Republicans to speak.
Whoever would like to speak. Okay. So now we're starting on our second round. It's the second shift. It's the night shift. Of the Connecticut delegation, Rosa DeLauro.
Thank you, John. Thank you for many reasons, for who you are, for what you have done this evening, and for really helping to focus our time and our attention on a critical issue.
Louder, Roger.
My God, you want me to be loud?
Yes, yes.
I was elected to this body in 1990. I took office in 1991. I had never run for a political office before. It was a steep learning curve for me. Never been in the legislature, but always a politician. When I came here, and I went to the Cannon Building to take my office, I passed by the office of John Lewis, and I stopped at the plaque, and I cried. Never in my lifetime, as a daughter of an immigrant, would I believe that I would serve with someone who had changed American history. And John, it is an honor for me. I love this job. It's an honor to serve in this body. And when you listen to the quality of the debate that we have had here tonight. It makes you so proud that we have been given this honor. You may not know this, my colleagues, but since 1789, less than 11,000 people have served as members of Congress. Yes, an honor, a blessing, and the people of this country have said to us, represent me, understand my needs, understand my family's needs, keep us safe, protect my children, protect us from harm. And you know, the greatest strength of this institution is not in what it does every day, because you and I know that some days it does exactly the opposite of what it should do. But its greatest strength is in its potential to do great things, to transform people's lives, to make a difference in their lives. And historically, it has done that. It did that with Social Security and with Medicare, with a GI Bill, with civil rights, with the ability for the working men and women of this country to be able to send their kids to school. And it did it, yes, with the Affordable Care Act. We have pushed the edge of the envelope. We have made this institution move in directions that our founding fathers believed it ought to move in. That is the power of this institution that we serve in. And today, the American public is clamoring to say, help us prevent gun violence, save our kids, save our families. And we have that power to address this issue, to again push the edge of the envelope and make this body reach its potential. We have a moral obligation. We have a moral responsibility to address the issue of universal background checks, of saying no to put guns in the hands of potential terrorists or terrorists, to allow research to be conducted, and for me personally, to ban assault weapons. What's at stake for our families is about their safety. Also at stake is their ability to believe in this institution once more, that we are here, that we are relevant, that we can respond to their needs. Let us vote on these pieces of legislation, because what we need to do is to tell the American public that we deserve the privilege of serving here that you have given us. We need to do this. We will do that. It's a great institution. We serve at the will of the public. Let us do the right thing for the people of this country.
It's my understanding the majority is coming to the floor to bring a bill to the floor, a rule to the floor, to act on the Zika legislation that we oppose, and then they're going to adjourn and bring us back right away for a new day, and then adjourn to July 5th to deny the people of this country a vote on a bill. And we will not tolerate that.
The gentleman contending that the Republicans would bring the Zika bill, the terrible Zika bill, up tonight, declare this another day, we vote on it in the middle of the night, and then they would leave town in a cowardly fashion in the middle of the night without addressing people's business?
Are they shutting us down?
They're claiming my time.
Yeah.
Yes, the gentlelady is correct. That is my understanding, that they will use a parliamentary procedure, Madam Leader, to deny Democrats to continue what we're doing here today, to open up to the American people how the House of Representatives is not operating in the interest of the American people. I will continue to yield.
Does the gentleman mean that we came in last night for votes?
Tuesday.
We will have votes tonight instead of staying here until Friday, Thursday and Friday. that we would then leave in the dark of night without taking a vote? No fly, no buy, no vote on background
I'm sorry.
checks, or no vote on the safety of the American people, while putting forth a dangerous Zika bill, which we should all oppose, and then leave in a cowardly fashion in the dark of night?
Shame! 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 I have no confirmation of that, Madam Leader. That is my understanding, though. That is exactly the tactics that they are going to use to try to shut us down, to shut the voice of the American people down, once again, here on the people's floor, the House of Representatives.
But we will be here tomorrow, whether they are here or not. Is that not correct?
No bill! No bill! No bill! No bill! No break! 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 That's exactly. Madam Leader, that's exactly my understanding what they're going to try to do.
I hope not, because that would be unbecoming.
Now, Madam Leader, earlier this evening, I had my 10-year-old son here on the floor with me. It was one of the most proud moments of my life for him to see what we can really do and accomplish, not for ourselves, but for them. The generation that's not voting yet, but someday will. And we look back historically on what their member of Congress did at this moment, whether they voted to adjourn and come back after the 4th of July, or stay here and do the people's business. Stay this evening, stay tomorrow, stay on Friday, stay through Saturday, stay through the 4th of July to do the people's business, Madam Leader.
And the House is officially back in session. These are the House cameras.
Resolution providing for consideration of the bill, H.R. 4768, to amend Title 5 United States Code with respect to the judicial review of agency interpretations of statutory and regulatory provisions, providing for proceedings during the period from June 23, 2016 through July 4, 2016, and providing for consideration of motions to suspend the rules. Report to accompany House Resolution 797, resolution providing for consideration of the conference report to accompany the bill, H.R. 2577, making appropriations for the Departments of Transportation and Housing and Urban Development and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2016, and for other purposes, providing for the proceedings during the period from June 23rd, 2016 through July 4th, 2016, and providing for consideration of motions to suspend the rules.
Refer to the House calendar. Ordered printed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion at the desk.
Clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Sessions of Texas moves that when the House adjourns on the legislative day of Wednesday, June 22nd, 2016, it adjourned to meet at 2:30 a.m. on Thursday, June 23rd, 2016.
Mr. Sessions moves that when the House adjourns on the legislative day, the motion is not debatable. The question is on the motion offered by the gentleman from Texas. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Continue the chair. The ayes have it. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I ask for the yeas and nays. I ask for a recorded vote.
Gentleman asked for a recorded vote. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
All right, we are still on the air here at C-SPAN. The House is officially in session right now. They're voting on changing the in time for the House, coming back at 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time for a new legislative day. We're going to put the phone numbers up.